on. Today, we are joined with another superstar in the Christian movement who wants to build strong Christians and strong citizens. And there's no one better in the country. He looks young. I keep getting older and hit big numbers every day. And here's one of my favorite guys, Ralph Reed. Welcome to the War Room. Glad to have you on, brother. If you want to respond, first of all, to some of that, and then the Waltz VP pick, and then gives Christians some sense of urgency. Waltz, I hear, is a Lutheran. And as I commented on the show, I'm not familiar with Luther being in favor of all this horrific policy. So enlighten us on what Christians should be doing in this modern world.
Well, thanks, Dave. Great to be with you. Steve is in our prayers. We're praying for him, and we appreciate you stepping into the gap here and being a voice on this critical network. Dave, there's no question. It's irrefutable. This is now officially the most far-left ticket, national ticket in American history. Kamala Harris, allowed the cup to pass that would have enabled her to broaden her reach, to move to the center, to try and reach the heartland of America with a message that was more centrist and mainstream. And instead, she doubled down on a far-left agenda. Tim Waltz is somebody who was a leader in the shutdowns. He shut the entire state down. He issued a executive order on May 13th of 2020, allowing retail establishments to reopen at up to 50% capacity, and had a glide path for bars and restaurants to open within a matter of weeks. But churches, Dave, were not allowed to organize with more than 10 congregants or worshipers. This was a dagger aimed at the heart of religious freedom in the state of Minnesota. It clearly violated the First Amendment rights of the people of that state. And frankly, you don't need to know anything else about this guy other than the fact that he thought that retail therapy was okay during COVID, but spiritual healing and worshiping in congregations was not. That tells you where his priorities are. This is a state that passed one of the most liberal, Dave, if not the most liberal abortion laws in America after the Dobbs decision, allowing abortion not only at any stage of pregnancy up to the moment of birth, but it has been documented. They have allowed abortions to take place when children were born alive during an abortion. No life was saved. A handful received so-called comfort care. They were all allowed to die. This is infanticide. He's an extremist on law and order issues. He's an extremist on gender issues, creating Minnesota as a sanctuary state where minors can come and have surgery that will change their gender without their parents' involvement or permission. This is a radical extremist, and it's the most radical left ticket in American history. We need to go out and tell that story. And for Christians, Dave, there has never been more on the line. On the life issue, on religious freedom, on support for Israel, you can't tell me that Josh Shapiro's support for the state of Israel and his clear opposition to radical Palestinian protesters at the University of Pennsylvania didn't play a role in him being disqualified to be on that ticket. There is no question that she was moving in that direction, and he was told that somebody of his views need not apply. So for evangelical Christians and other believers in this country who support the state of Israel, there's never been anything more on the line.
Denver, we got Ralph. Did we lose him? We got him back connected. All right. I think we're reconnecting with Ralph Reed. I think he's up. Hey, Ralph, are you with us? You with us, Ralph? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can.
Great. Thank you for the summary and the strong statement. And I think it's time for the Christians to double down on the entire litany you just listed and form a social contract in this country. And I would like you, and I'm happy to help out on it, but we need Christian leaders to make a contract and think through how can we put a testable proposition in front of the presidential candidate Kamala Harris and VP Walz. Some statement about affirming that Christians are entitled to the full spectrum of rights that all Americans are entitled to. Equal treatment, not special treatment, equal treatment under the law, First Amendment freedoms to free speech, to free assembly. I mean, it's just stunning. The American people, and I grew up with a Minnesota nice people. I grew up in high school in Minnesota. They're all super nice people. Yeah, and they've become passive, right? And so what would you recommend to the War Room Posse? We have an active, very active group. But what kind of a statement should we be looking to put forward to the Democrats? We've given a pass. We don't ask them objectively. Do you believe in God? That matters, right? Do you believe in God?
I think it's a great idea, Dave. I think we need to put something like that together. And what I would urge your viewers who are watching the War Room to do is contact their elected officials, specifically their 2 senators and their member of Congress. Contact them by email or phone call today, as soon as this show is over. I don't want to pull them away from the show and ask them whether or not they agree with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on these critical issues of minors receiving gender transitioning services, surgery without their parents' permission, on churches being closed when bars and restaurants and retail establishments are being reopened, the hostility towards the state of Israel, trying to force them into a ceasefire that would allow Hamas to survive as a military power in Gaza and empower Iran, abortion on demand up to the moment of birth, including a child born alive who is systematically executed and allowed to die on a table. Ask them whether or not they agree with those things, and ask them to issue a public statement, either affirming their support of those stands or their opposition. And by the way, especially Democrats, because I got to tell you, I think there's at least 12 to 15 Democrats in the House, maybe as many as 30, and multiple U.S. Senate candidates, including Sherrod Brown in Ohio, obviously John Tester in Montana, and Mark Kelly, and many others who are not going to want to be associated with this ticket. They're not going to want to be seen with them. They're not going to want to campaign with them. And we've got to hit the gas on this thing, Dave.
Yeah, well, I agree with you 100%, Ralph. And what you said at the end, those conditions, do you agree? And, of course, all of them are very clever communicators. I lived with all of them up in the swamp for a few years. And they're clever at getting around things, but putting out a public statement, that's a key, or a written statement on behalf of these innocent children who are just being mutilated, right? And these policies, they're unconscionable. As I said earlier in the show, the Marxists wouldn't dream of doing this on their own people, right? There's none of this going on in Russia or China, right? This is a neo-Marxist takedown in this country, and passive Christians are letting it happen. Before we let you go, Ralph, tell us how people can get to you, contact you, help your group, and then just first give us your coordinates there so people can reach out and support you.
They can reach us at Faith and Freedom at FF Coalition, FF as in Faith and Freedom Coalition.com. And Dave, as you know, in the next roughly 90 days, we're going to knock on the doors of 10 million homes with 17 to 18 million evangelical and Bible-believing Christians in those homes. It's the largest ground game for the faith community in the history of modern American politics. Every one of the issues that you and I have talked about is going to be on those door hangers and on those voter guides. And there's one other I want to mention, Dave. It's critical. And that is their Supreme Court packing plan. Their scheme to repeal the filibuster in the Senate. If Kamala Harris becomes president, they will repeal the filibuster if they have the Senate. and they will impose term limits on the conservative judges, and they'll get rid of 3 justices. They'll appoint radical left-wingers to every one of them, and we will not only lose the presidency and the White House, we'll lose the Supreme Court, and with it, our country. Every one of those issues, Dave, 10 to 12 issues, will go on door hangers, will be presented to those 17 to 18 million voters with an emphasis on Christian voters that don't turn out in every election, so-called low propensity voters. And if people want to volunteer to walk their neighborhood, to organize their church, go to ffcoalition.com. There's a place to volunteer. Dave, we will have over 10,000 paid staff and volunteers in the battleground states knocking on those 10 million doors. And when we do so, ignore the polls, forget about the polls, because if you're talking about 17 to 18 million voters that are reached at the door that are going to turn out at 5, 10, 15% higher rate than they normally would, you're talking about 1.5 million to 2 million votes they're not even counting on.
Yep. Hey, Ralph, before you go, just real quick, I just want to heighten the energy for the evangelicals, for the Catholic brothers and sisters out there, for our Jewish friends. What % of the religious community is not voting right now? It's staggering.
It is staggering. We estimate among evangelical Christians alone, it's about 17 million, about half of whom are not registered, and about half of whom are registered but don't vote. So that's 27% of the electorate. It's about 42 million total voters. So if we got the unregistered registered, it would rise to about 51 million. And if we got all of them to vote, there's virtually no national election that we could not swing. It's the largest single constituency in the electorate. It's bigger than the Hispanic vote, the African American vote, and the Union vote combined. All we got to do, Dave, is make sure these folks understand what's on the line, what the issues are that could be affected, how it could affect them, their family, and their children, and make it clear to them they have a Christian obligation and a responsibility to be an effective citizen, be informed, and vote. This isn't about one party versus another. It's not about left and right. The Bible teaches that we are to be effective and empowered citizens of both a heavenly kingdom that is yet to fully come and the earthly kingdom wherever God has planted us. And this is not an option. We've got to be informed. We got to vote. That's the work we're doing right now, Dave.
Yep, no better man. Ralph Reed, his entire life has been devoted to the Christian mission, the church, getting effective citizens. Remember, in this country, under our Constitution, we the people are the sovereign. Romans 13 says, obey your rulers. In the United States of America, you are the rulers. Your congressmen and women and senators all serve you. The people are in charge. You need to be an effective moral leader. So, Ralph Reed, thanks for your leadership and your life work, and God bless you. Thanks for being in the war room today, brother.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be with you.